My name is Clara Mae Harrison, and for 67 years I believed that family was everything. I raised my daughter alone after my husband Elijah passed away. Every breath I took, every dollar I earned was for her. I cleaned houses for 2 families, the Rodwells and the Millers, scrubbing floors until my knees swelled, saving every cent so Hope could go to college, so she could have the kind of life I never did. I used to dream about her wedding. I imagined myself standing beside her, holding her bouquet while she said her vows, tears of joy streaming down both our faces. Instead, I found out through Facebook. A photo of my daughter in white, standing with her new husband, Devin Hayes. The caption read, "Our special day, family complete." Family complete. Without me. I sat there in my kitchen in Atlanta, my coffee growing cold in my hands, and felt a pain deeper than I had when Elijah died. At least death has finality. This felt like being erased. I called Hope 3 times that day. Straight to voicemail. I sent her messages pretending I hadn't seen the photo. "Are you okay, sweetheart? Need anything?" Hours later her reply came. "I'm fine, Mama. We'll talk later." Later. Always later. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, realizing that I had spent my entire life being a mother to someone who no longer needed one. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table and remembered. Memories came like a flood I couldn't stop. I remembered Hope at 5 years old, sick with pneumonia. I worked all day cleaning in Buckhead and sewed at night to afford her medicine. For 2 weeks I barely slept 3 hours a night. When she finally recovered, she hugged me tight and said, "Mama, when I get married, you'll be my maid of honor. The prettiest one ever." Those words lived in my heart for over 20 years. I remembered her sweet 16. I sold my wedding jewelry to pay for the party, cooked everything myself, worked double shifts to rent the hall. She hugged me that night and said, "You're the best mama in the world. I'll never forget what you've done for me." And I believed her. I remembered the little things too, the mornings I woke before dawn to make her breakfast, the nights I sat awake waiting for her to come home, the weekends we spent at Auntie Dolores's house with her father's family, trying to keep some part of Elijah alive for her. When Hope went to college, I took on more work so she wouldn't have to worry about money. I wanted her to focus on her dreams. But that's when she started slipping away. She stopped calling as much. When I asked about her classes, she'd say, "It's fine, Mama. I'll tell you later." Then came Devin. The first time she mentioned him, her voice softened in a way that made me both happy and afraid. "He's from a good family," she said. "He's ambitious, kind, smart." I cooked a whole Southern feast when he first came over. Fried chicken, mac and cheese, yams, cornbread, sweet tea. I wanted him to feel welcome, to see that I might not have money, but I had warmth, pride, and love. He was polite, but his eyes roamed the house like he was taking inventory of all the things we didn't have. After that dinner, Hope stopped bringing him around. She said they were busy, that his family had expectations. Now I see it clearly. I wasn't part of those expectations. When she graduated, she moved into Devin's apartment. I told myself it was just the beginning of her adult life, that she needed space. But space turned into distance, and distance turned into silence. And then her wedding. No invitation. No call. Not even a text. Just a picture. It's strange how quiet the world feels when your purpose disappears. I used to wake up thinking about what to cook for her, what bills to pay, what dreams to help her chase. Now I wake up to the sound of my own breath and wonder who I am if not Hope's mother. But something changed after that photo. Somewhere between the grief and the silence, another version of me began to stir. Maybe I'll never be the kind of mother who's invited to the table anymore. Maybe I've been replaced by new faces, new traditions. But I'm still here. I'm still Clara Mae Harrison. And for the first time in my life, I'm beginning to wonder what it means to live for myself. And the days that followed, I found myself drifting through the house like a ghost. Every room whispered her name. The framed photos on the mantelpiece, Hope with missing front teeth, Hope in her prom dress, Hope holding her college diploma, all stared back at me like pieces of a life that had moved on without me. I tried to keep busy. I cleaned, I cooked, I watered the plants. But none of it filled the silence. There's a kind of stillness that seeps into your bones when the person you love most chooses to forget you. By the third night, I took out a box from under my bed. Inside were the letters Hope used to write to me when she was little. I love you, Mama. You're my hero. She'd drawn crooked hearts and little stick figures of us holding hands. I ran my fingers over the crayon marks, and for a moment, I could almost hear her small voice again. But that was a long time ago. On Saturday morning, I decided to go out. I hadn't left the house much since the photo. I put on my favorite blue dress, the one Elijah always said made my eyes look like summer sky, and went to the farmer's market. People smiled, waved, asked about Hope. How's your daughter doing these days? I smiled back, practiced polite. She's doing fine, I said. She got married recently. Their faces lit up. Oh, that's wonderful. Was it a big wedding? I nodded. It was beautiful. And then I walked away before they could ask the question I didn't want to answer. Were you there? That night I sat on the porch, watching the sun melt into the horizon. I thought about calling her again. My thumb hovered over her number, but I stopped myself. What would I even say? Hi, baby, it's your mama. The one you forgot to invite to your new life? No. If she wanted space, I would give it to her. But not out of pride. Out of self-respect. Because love isn't supposed to mean disappearing. The next morning, I found an envelope in my mailbox. There was no return address, but I recognized her handwriting right away. My heart skipped a beat as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Mama, I know you're hurt. I know you saw the photo. I wanted to tell you, but things got complicated. Devin's family. They wanted something small, quiet. I didn't want to upset anyone. I thought I could explain later once things settled. I'm sorry, Mama. I love you. Please understand. Hope. I read it 5 times. Each word stung like a paper cut. Small, sharp, and almost invisible. I didn't want to upset anyone. And somehow I wasn't part of anyone. Still, I folded the letter gently and placed it on the kitchen table. For a moment I thought about writing back. But then I realized that sometimes silence speaks louder than forgiveness. Over the next few weeks, I began to rediscover the quiet corners of my own life. I started baking again, not because Hope loved my pecan pie, but because I did. I joined a local book club. I planted roses in the backyard. Red ones like Elijah used to bring me when we were young. The days began to feel softer, lighter. One evening, as I was watering the garden, my phone buzzed. It was Hope. I stared at the screen, her name glowing against the dim light. My heart raced. After all that time, she was finally calling. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. Mama. Her voice was small. Nervous. I just wanted to check on you. I've been thinking about you a lot. I'm fine, baby, I said softly. How's married life? There was a pause. It's different. Devin's job keeps him busy. His parents have been, well, they have their ways. I could hear the uncertainty in her voice, the kind that only comes when life doesn't turn out like the fairy tale you imagined. I miss you, Mama, she said finally. Tears welled in my eyes, but I held my voice steady. I miss you too, Hope. But you made your choices. Just make sure they're your own. Silence hung between us, thick and heavy. Then she whispered, Can I come visit this weekend? For a long moment I couldn't speak. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately, to wrap her in my arms and pretend none of this had ever happened. But another part of me, the part that had learned to survive heartbreak, knew that forgiveness had to mean something deeper than comfort. You can, I said slowly. But only if you come as my daughter, not out of guilt. I understand, she said quietly. When the call ended, I sat back on the porch, watching the first fireflies dance through the dusk. Maybe this was what love really looked like. Not perfect, not constant, but alive, stubborn, willing to find its way back even after being lost. I don't know if we'll ever be what we once were. But I do know this. I'm no longer waiting by the phone. I'm living again. And when Hope does come back, if she does, I'll be here. Not as the woman she forgot to invite, but as the mother who finally remembered herself. That weekend came faster than I expected. I spent Friday cleaning the house. Not for her, but for me. I wanted my space to feel warm, peaceful, alive again. The smell of lemon polish and fresh bread filled the air, just like old times. But this time, I wasn't setting the table for someone else's approval. I was reclaiming my home. Saturday morning I woke up early, nerves twisting in my stomach. Every sound outside made me glance at the window. Then around 10 I saw her car pull up in front of the house. a shiny silver sedan I'd never seen before. Hope stepped out slowly. She looked older somehow, not in years but in the way people look when life has already started testing them. She wore a soft beige coat and carried a small bag. For a second I almost didn't recognize her. When our eyes met, neither of us spoke. She hesitated at the gate, and I could see the guilt in her face, the kind that can't be hidden behind polite smiles. "Mama," she whispered, her voice trembling. That I didn't run to her and I didn't cry. I just opened the door wide. "Come on in, baby." She walked inside, glancing around as if afraid the house might look different. Everything was the same. The same curtains, the same photos, even the same old rug by the door she used to trip over as a child. "It smells like home," she said softly. "It is home," I replied. "Always has been." We sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where I used to braid her hair before school, where we'd laugh over pancakes and talk about her dreams. But now silence hung between us like an invisible wall. "I don't know where to start," she finally said. "Try the truth," I said gently. She took a deep breath. "Devon's parents wanted a small ceremony. They said it would be better, less complicated. They think you wouldn't fit in with their kind of people." I felt the words cut deep, but I didn't flinch. "And what did you think, Hope?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I thought I could fix it later. That if I just went along, things would be easier. I didn't want to lose him. And you lost me instead," I said quietly. Her face broke then, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Mama. I was scared. They made me feel like I had to choose." I stood up and poured us both some tea. "You always have a choice, Hope. Love isn't about choosing between people. It's about having the courage to stand for the ones who stood for you." She nodded, her hands trembling as she took the cup. "I know that now. Devon's parents. They don't understand where I come from. They look at me like I'm pretending to be someone else. And sometimes I think maybe I am." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You don't have to pretend here. You never did." We sat in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't hurt anymore. Just settles softly between two people finding their way back. Then she smiled through her tears. "You're still making that same sweet tea," she said. "And you still drink it too fast." I laughed. For the first time in months it felt easy again. Like breathing after holding my breath for too long. As the afternoon light spilled through the window, Hope stood up and looked around the kitchen. "Do you still have that old recipe box?" she asked. I pointed to the shelf. She pulled it down, flipping through the yellowed cards until she found the one for Elijah's favorite pecan pie. "Can we make this together?" she asked. My throat tightened, but I smiled. "Of course we can." As we baked, we talked not about the wedding, not about Devon, but about life. About small things. About the future. She told me she wanted to come by more often, that maybe she'd like to spend Sundays here like we used to. By evening, the kitchen was filled with laughter, the smell of caramel and pecans, and something I thought I'd lost forever, hope. When she left that night, she hugged me tight. "I don't know how to make this right, Mama," she said. "You just did," I whispered. After she drove off, I sat back on the porch again. The stars were out, bright and endless. I thought about the long road it took to get here, the pain, the silence, the waiting, and realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes love has to break before it can heal. Sometimes a mother's heart has to learn to let go so her child can find her way back home. And as the night wrapped around me, I closed my eyes and whispered into the darkness, "Welcome home, my girl. Welcome home." Would you like me to continue the story from here? Perhaps showing how Hope's marriage begins to falter, and how their mother-daughter bond deepens as she learns more about Devon's world? That could lead into a powerful second arc. The weeks that followed Hope's visit felt like spring after a long winter. She began calling more often, sometimes just to ask for a recipe, other times to tell me about her day. It wasn't every day, but enough to remind me she still remembered where she came from. First, I was careful. I didn't want to ask too many questions or pry into her marriage. But little things started slipping through her words, the kind of small, quiet details a mother notices even when a daughter tries to hide them. She'd say, "Devon's been working late again," or, "His mom thinks we should move closer to them." Her tone was always calm, but I could hear the strain under it, like a violin string pulled too tight. One Saturday evening, she came by unannounced. When I opened the door, I barely recognized her. Her eyes were swollen, her makeup smudged. She looked like a little girl again, lost and scared. "Hope," I whispered. "What happened?" She didn't answer. She just threw her arms around me and sobbed into my shoulder. I held her for what felt like hours. When she finally pulled back, she said quietly, "I can't do this anymore, Mama. I can't pretend everything's perfect." I guided her to the couch. "Sit down, baby. Start from the beginning." She took a deep breath. "It's Devin. He's not cruel, not exactly. But he doesn't see me, Mama. Not the real me. Everything I say is wrong. Everything I do is too much or not enough. His mother calls every day telling me how I should dress, how I should speak, even how to decorate the house." Her voice broke. "I thought marrying him would make me happy. I thought it would make life easier. But I feel like I disappeared." I reached for her hand. "You can lose yourself in trying to please people who never wanted you to belong in the first place." She wiped her tears. "You were right. I thought I had to become someone else to fit into his world. But all I did was push away the one person who truly loved me." I looked at her, my daughter, fragile and strong all at once, and realized something. Maybe this was the lesson we both needed. She had to lose her way to find herself, and I had to let her go to remember who I was without her. "You can come home," I said softly. "If that's what you want. You don't have to decide right now, but know that the door is always open." She nodded, her lips trembling. "I just need time, Mama. To think. To breathe." "Then breathe here," I said. "There's space for you to do that." That night, she stayed in her old room. I heard her moving around, opening drawers, maybe looking at the little things she'd left behind. The stuffed bear missing an ear, the faded posters, the framed photo of her and Elijah at the park. When I peeked in before going to bed, she was asleep, curled under the quilt I'd sewn years ago. Her face looked peaceful, younger. For the first time in a long while, she looked like my hope again. The next morning we made breakfast together. Pancakes, bacon, and that same sweet tea she always gulped too fast. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. The silence between us was no longer heavy. It was healing. Over the next few weeks she came by often. Sometimes just for dinner, sometimes to spend the night. She told me more about Devin, about the cracks in their perfect picture. I didn't judge. I listened. One afternoon, she looked up from her cup of tea and said, "Mama, I'm thinking about leaving him." I met her gaze and said simply, "Then leave with your head high. Not because you failed, but because you finally remembered who you are." She nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. "I forgot that for a while." "You come from strong women," I told her. "We bend, but we don't break." A month later, she moved back home. Devin didn't fight much. Maybe he'd already checked out long before she did. She found a job at a local firm downtown, started fresh. There were hard days, yes, nights when she cried quietly in her room, mornings when the world felt too heavy. But little by little, she began to shine again. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she said, "You know, Mama, I used to think strength was about never needing anyone. But now I think it's about knowing who'll still stand beside you when everything falls apart." I smiled. "And who's that for you, baby?" She reached over and squeezed my hand. "You." The sky was turning pink and gold, the air thick with the scent of blooming jasmine. For the first time in years, I felt something I'd thought I'd lost forever, peace. I looked at her and said, "You know, Hope, life has a funny way of teaching us what really matters. You can chase comfort, money, fancy names. But in the end, love is the only thing that stays when the music stops." She nodded, resting her head on my shoulder. Then I guess I finally came home to the right kind of love. And in that moment, I realized something beautiful. The story wasn't about being forgotten after all. It was about being found again, by the very person I'd once lost. Would you like me to continue the story one last time, showing how Hope rebuilds her life and how Clara finally begins a new chapter of her own? Maybe opening her own small business or finding companionship again in her later years. It could close their arc in a hopeful, empowering way. The months rolled by, gentle and steady, like waves finally finding their rhythm. Hope settled into her new life with quiet determination. She found a small apartment just 10 minutes from my house. Nothing fancy but bright and cozy, filled with sunlight and the smell of lavender candles. She'd come over almost every evening after work, bringing groceries or flowers. Sometimes we'd cook together, sometimes we'd just sit in silence watching those old TV shows we used to laugh at. It was like rediscovering an old song. The melody was familiar, but it meant something deeper now. Hope started smiling again. Not the polite, polished smile she used in Devon's world, but the real one, the one that reached her eyes. She talked about applying for a promotion, about traveling, about maybe taking up painting again like she did in college. I was proud. Not because of what she was doing, but because of who she was becoming, strong, grounded, and finally free. One evening in early autumn, as we were cleaning up after dinner, she turned to me and said, "Mama, do you ever think about what comes next? For you, I mean." I paused, dish towel in hand. "What do you mean?" She smiled softly. "You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. Maybe it's time you do something for yourself." Hope noticed. One evening, she caught me humming in the kitchen and raised an eyebrow. "Mama, you've been glowing lately. Anything you want to tell me?" I laughed, blushing like a girl. "Don't you start, Hope Harrison." She grinned. "You deserve it, Mama. Whatever it is, you deserve it." As the leaves began to fall, Henry and I started spending more time together. Long walks in the park, church on Sundays, dinners at his place. There was no rush, no grand declarations. Just two people finding comfort in each other's company. One evening, sitting on my porch with Hope and Henry, watching the sunset paint the sky in gold and purple, I realized how full my heart felt. Hope turned to me and said, "You know, Mama, I used to think family was something that could be broken. But now I see it just changes shape." I took her hand and squeezed it. "That's right, baby. It bends, it stretches, but it's always there if you keep your heart open." She smiled. "You taught me that." And as the crickets began to sing and the air grew soft with evening light, I felt peace settle deep inside me. Not the fragile kind that breaks with sorrow, but the kind that comes from surviving it. I'd lost so much. A husband, a dream, even my place in my daughter's life for a while. But somehow, through it all, life had found a way to give me something new. Not the life I once imagined, but maybe the one I was always meant to have. Because in the end, love doesn't disappear. It just finds new ways to come home. Would you like me to write an epilogue next? A gentle closing set years later, showing how Clara's story comes full circle, and how both women finally find lasting peace and purpose? The world has changed, but my mornings haven't. I still rise before the sun, put on a pot of coffee, and sit by the kitchen window while the light slowly fills the room. There's something sacred about the quiet before the day begins. It's where I find my peace now. Clara's Comforts has grown more than I ever imagined. What started as a small pie stand at the farmer's market turned into a cozy little bakery downtown. Henry helped me find the place. A charming corner shop with brick walls, white shelves, and the smell of cinnamon that never quite leaves your clothes. Some days I still can't believe it's mine. Our place, really. Hope comes by often to help with the books, and Henry handles the morning deliveries. We've built something beautiful, steady, not perfect but real. The locals know me now. They come in for my pecan pies, my peach cobblers, and my stories. Some even call me Mama Clara. I like that. It feels like I've gathered a whole new family. One made not by blood, but by kindness, shared moments, and laughter that fills the air like music. Hope has found her own rhythm too. After leaving Devon, she focused on her career and eventually opened her own small event planning company. She calls it New Light Events. Said it was inspired by me. "Because you taught me that even after the darkest night," she told me once, "the light still finds a way." She's stronger now, confident, calm, wise. Last year she met someone new. A man named Marcus who treats her with the gentleness I always prayed she'd find. They aren't rushing anything, and that's what I love most. She's learning to build love slowly this time, brick by brick, truth by truth. I'll never forget the afternoon she came to tell me about him. We were closing the bakery for the day when she said, "Mama, I was afraid to love again. But then I thought of you and Henry, how you both just let it happen naturally. And I thought, maybe I could do that too." I smiled and said, "Baby, love isn't something you chase. It's something you welcome." Now every Sunday the three of them, Hope, Marcus, and Henry, join me for dinner. The house is full again. Laughter in the kitchen, the sound of music from the old record player, the smell of cornbread baking in the oven. Sometimes, when Hope's head rests on my shoulder and Henry's hand holds mine, I think back to the night I saw that wedding picture. the one that nearly broke me. If only that woman, sitting alone in her kitchen, could see this moment now. She'd know that losing one kind of love doesn't mean love is gone forever. It just changes form, reshapes itself, grows again where you least expect it. Last night, as I was locking up the bakery, Hope came by with a little box in her hands. "For you," she said. Inside was a small gold locket with a photo, me, her, and Henry, smiling in front of the shop. On the back, she'd engraved 3 words. Family. Always. Found. I felt tears well up, not from sadness, but from the quiet fullness of a heart that has finally come home. Now I know the answer to the question that haunted me years ago. What does a mother do when she stops being family? She doesn't stop being family. She just keeps loving until love finds its way back. And in the golden stillness of each morning, I thank God for second chances, for the sweetness that follows the bitter, for the pie cooling on the windowsill, for the laughter in my kitchen, and for the woman I finally became. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I found the letter. Tucked inside an old recipe book, my mother's apple pie one, the edges yellowed and the ink slightly faded. I knew that handwriting anywhere. It was Hope's. I sat down by the window, the same window where I used to wait for her calls, my hands trembling just a little as I unfolded the paper.